All right, Kevin back with you for another episode of the Million Dollar Relationships podcast. And today I'm here with Michael. Michael, welcome. So awesome to have you here today.
Hey, Kevin, great to be with you.
Yeah.
Excited for our conversation.
I'll tell you, I remember you and I, though we weren't necessarily didn't have a close relationship, but we met. We were both in this group that Dove was running and stuff, the JVMM group and stuff. And I'll tell you, we have a lot of mutual friends, you and I, for sure. And when we have mutual friends like that, it's always it makes it really simple for us to connect because we have these mutual friends that we have so much respect and admiration for that we're like, well, if they're in my circle, they're obviously good people and stuff. And it's just another testament to the value of relationships.
100%. I mean, Perry being the one I think connected us most recently.
Yes.
And you know that when a connection or an introduction comes through someone as wonderful and amazing as he is, just a really great person, that it doesn't require much second thought as to, like, I'm sure it's gonna be a fun conversation. And especially when it's been a while since you and I have kind of crossed paths once Perry made that connection for us. Again, I was just excited to catch up with you.
Yeah. And I'll tell you, Perry is one of those guys. Well, I know for him and I, so Perry and I, we met in 1999. So that has been, oh my gosh, what is that? 23 years ago now, 24 years ago. That is a long-standing relationship right there, and you're right, that when we have those kind of relationships, I mean, how do you even look back at that and try to pinpoint all the things that have come as a result of even that one relationship, but it's been
it might require a ring because you're almost at the quarter century, right?
Yeah. So
definitely something to be celebrated.
Absolutely. It definitely is. And Perry is one of those guys that has just become such a close friend over the years. And in fact, I remember when we were, my family, we were down in Jamaica, and we've been supporting this orphanage down there since 2008. And we go down there regularly as a family. We take our kids, we take our grandkids, we even take our kids as friends from school will sometimes go with us on these experiences. And it was just cool to let them come along for it.
Sure.
And one time we were down there, we were leaving the orphanage and we were going back to our hotel, and my wife announces to me that, honey, I want to adopt, which I about had a heart attack. I'm thinking, adopt? Honey, we got 6 kids. We're good. She goes, no. She goes, I really want to do this, honey. She goes, I want to give one child a leg up and an opportunity that they wouldn't have if not for us. And she goes, I really want to do this. And she was serious. And it kind of rocked my world. But Perry was the first guy I reached out to as soon as we got home, because I knew he had adopted. And I'm like, Perry, I got to talk to you, man. Long story short, without going into it, Perry, as soon as I talked with him, it's just like, maybe there's something here. And I became more open to it. And we did adopt. It has been 8 years ago now that we adopted, and
wow.
We adopted Abby when she was 3. She's 11 now, and it has been an absolutely amazing experience. And so my wife was onto something there.
There you go. That's beautiful.
So, yeah. Well, what I'd like to do is just kind of start by turning it over to you and letting you, set a little bit of context here, share some background, a little bit of background, what you do, who you serve, what inspires you to do what you do. And we'll just kind of start there, Michael.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, so Consulting Success is our company, and it's where we help entrepreneurial consultants to build more profitable and scalable and strategic consulting businesses. So we work with 2 groups of people. Typically, there are those that are already running, 6 and 7 figure consulting businesses that really want to take things to the next level. They want help with their marketing. They want help with scaling or building out their team or just improving profitability or something else that is important to them. And then there's those that are looking to transition from being executives typically or having senior kind of level experience that want to get into consulting, and they have the expertise, but they have really no experience on the building of the consulting business side. So that's really who we serve. We have an amazing team who are all experts in their own areas and are either consultants who have really been, in the trenches, and so they really understand what it takes to build a successful consulting business. And these are our coaches that work in our programs. And then we have a wonderful, team of other people that help with operations or marketing, content, and everything else inside of the business. But we've been doing this now. Consulting Success has been about 13, 14 years. And really where this all came from, Kevin, was going back now almost 24 years ago when my cousin Sam and I, who's still my business partner to this day, co-founders, we've kind of built and sold multiple companies over the years together. But we had experience of building our own consulting businesses and running them. One of those I'll talk about maybe later with in terms of doing that in Japan. But we really got to experience a lot of the highs of the successes of running these kinds of businesses, but also all the challenges. And it can feel pretty lonely, especially if you are a solo consultant, or even if you have just a small team. There's a lot of unknowns. There's a lot of kind of landmines that are, all over the place. And so our whole goal in starting Consulting Success was that we wanted to share what we had learned, the good, the bad, the ugly. Our real goal was to help to accelerate the success of people so that they could make an impact and they could just really be successful in terms of their consulting business, but also their lifestyle. And so everything that we do is led with this idea of not just building a big business that makes a lot of money. I mean, those are nice things, but ultimately it's about building a business that supports your lifestyle. And we see a lot of people in the business world who, if you kind of viewed their life in general, or everything they have going on as a triangle or kind of a pyramid, the apex, the top of that triangle would be their business. And they put that up there. They spend the majority of their time thinking about their business. And then they have their lifestyle below that. And they have to make all kinds of sacrifices inside of their lifestyle to support their business. And our belief, which has continued to evolve and kind of be reinforced over the years, is that it needs to be the other way around, that at the apex, the top of the triangle, your lifestyle needs to be there. And so it's prioritizing what is important to you. It might be family, children, loved ones, hobbies, whatever really just inspires you and motivates you and gives you energy and is good for you as a person. That needs to be prioritized first. And then once you're very clear on what kind of lifestyle you want to have, and ultimately for you, what does success look like, then your business goes below that. And then you can make adjustments in your business. So you can be very intentional in building a business that supports your lifestyle and not the other way around.
Yeah. And that is huge. I know personally, I've experienced both. A business that where I felt chained to the business. In fact, the first business that I started years ago, which was a cleaning and restoration company, and I started that business in 1996. And for a period of time, I felt totally chained to that business, and that is not a good feeling. And I'll tell you, knowing what I know now, there's no amount of money that would what's the right word that would allow me to go back and have that again. I don't want that again. And I don't care how much money I can have. I don't ever want to feel like that again. I have a business now that, it's on my terms, and it's just an extension of who I am. And just, I get to show up and serve people. I love serving, and it does fit in and fund and support the lifestyle I want to live, and allows me to provide for my family in a way that makes me feel great. And you're right, that first is huge. It is huge. And well, okay. So now that we've got a little bit of context set here, I'm excited to dig in a little bit deeper onto this. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to reiterate the question for the benefit of the listeners, and then we'll shift gears slightly. So have you ever been introduced to a person a person or persons that completely changed the course of your life or your business, so much so that much of what you have today would not be possible if not for this person or persons? And Michael, I'm just really excited to hear your story and your experience around this, as well as give you the opportunity to honor somebody who has had such a profound impact on your life and on your business.
Yeah. Well, Kevin, I mean, you know, the answer to that is yes, or we wouldn't be having this conversation right now, right? But I mean, the answer is yes multiple times. And as you and I spoke before hitting the record button, what's interesting is that the people that stand out, the moment that you asked me this question originally, the people that came to mind for me are all in Japan. They were all people that had a tremendous influence and impact on the success of the business that we had in Japan. And just to kind of take a step back and provide a little bit more context. So Sam and I were running a design consulting business based in North America. And I decided to head over to Japan and essentially open up kind of the branch office for that business. But when you go to a completely different country, so we're talking different language, different culture, different values, right? Everything is almost the opposite of what you're used to and the types of clients that you're used to. It's not as simple as just showing up and, you know, knocking on people's doors, because quite frankly, people they wouldn't even open the door. You know, you're this white guy, you know, standing at their door, like they're not even going to open it because they don't necessarily even think that you can speak Japanese. So I knew that would not be the approach to being successful. And so what I first did before actually even going to Japan, and before I decided to getting to the point of actually opening up an office for us there, was to send a bunch of emails. And this is kind of like where the quote unquote hard work part came in. But I found a list of different design firms and architecture firms in the Osaka area of Japan online. And I literally just sent an email in English, because at that point my Japanese was not very good, and certainly not typing in Japanese characters. But I was in Toronto. I'll never forget, I was visiting my uncle at his house, and I kind of booted up the computer and shot off maybe 20, 25 emails to people that I'd never met before, just with the hope that I might get some replies. Mm-hmm. And I remember from the 25 or so emails that I sent, I only got 2 replies. Okay. And I met both those people when I went to Osaka for a shorter trip. And the whole goal was just to see if there might be an entry point, or, you know, in my mind, I'd be much more successful trying to make things happen through others that already had relationships established and already had, you know, ins into the industry, and honestly could guide me and share a lot of the things that I certainly would not know about the market at that point. And one of those people specifically, his name is Shinosuke. When I met with him, it was an instant connection. You know, we're 2 very different people from very different backgrounds. You know, we don't have much similarity that would be apparent initially, but we just hit it off and had a really quick connection. And what transpired from that, and so Shinosuke was and still is the owner of one of the top design firms in Osaka, Japan. But what happened from that is that he introduced me to someone else. And this other person that he introduced me to was Moriya-san, as I would call him. And he was the managing director of a Japanese advertising agency. And I got to know him. So feel free, Kevin, to jump in and pick apart any of this if you want, or ask any other clarifying questions. But you want me to just kind of go on and share a bit more of the story?
Continue on for now. Yeah.
Sure. So I'll never forget that Shinosuke introduced me and connected me to Moriya. We actually went into one of the tallest buildings in Osaka. It was one of the construction companies, their kind of head office building. And at the top of this building, they had this beautiful bar. And so for anyone that's kind of seen Lost in Translation with Bill Murray, he's in Tokyo and he's doing a Suntory commercial or something for Suntory whiskey, but he's at a bar drinking a beer. And it was very similar to that, yet many years before that movie even came out. Okay. And I was sitting there overlooking the skyline of Osaka, which is the second largest city in Japan. right? Millions and millions of people. And the other thing, which I should mention, is I was much younger. So I was in my early 20s, and these guys were in their, so Shinosuke was probably in his late 40s, Moria in his mid 50s, give or take. So I was significantly younger than these guys, but we just had a nice conversation about what, our cultures and our backgrounds. And it wasn't so much about business right away, but fast forward, from that initial meeting where we had a couple of drinks together and just kind of got to know each other, that led to subsequent meetings. And then to all of a sudden, both Moria and Shinosuke saying, hey, we have this client or this project. Do you think you might be able to help with this? Or do you want to come to the meeting? And so they started opening all these doors that otherwise to, a small foreign company would be very challenging to open. They opened those doors. And that was not the expectation that I had, because really, and quite frankly, I didn't know necessarily what to expect. I think my goal was simply to build relationships with people that could maybe open some doors, but I wasn't really clear on exactly what those doors would be and what it would look like. And I never would have imagined that, someone in my early 20s would have been given access and, been brought to boardrooms to meet CEOs and chairmen and senior directors of, multi-billion-dollar organizations. And so much of this, if we fast forward, a year or two, it had us doing projects with companies like Panasonic and Omron and Shimadzu and Nisha and Sumitomo and a whole bunch of other very large organizations. And so again, I think very often about how what these guys did was, sure, there was benefit in it for them. I mean, it allowed them to essentially bring a competitive advantage or something that they didn't have, which was a foreign perspective and, being able to offer more English-based services that they didn't necessarily have or they weren't very good at. So yes, there was a benefit, a financial benefit to them and just an impact benefit to them, but they certainly did not need to go as far as they did in terms of making me feel comfortable and kind of taking me under their wing and supporting me and guiding me, both when, I've made mistakes or our company made mistakes, and they would say, hey, here's what's wrong here and we need to do this. And I'll never forget one time I got a call. It was 7 a.m. in the morning and it was Moria. So I picked up the phone. This is not a cell phone, even just a regular old phone. One of the ones that, connects to a fax machine that was in my apartment. And Moria's voice was still gruff. And he's like, we have a problem with this client. We need to solve it. I was like, what? I knew something was going on because he would never call that early in the morning. Usually it'd be a little bit later. I'd go down and meet him, have a coffee. We'd kind of, talk through things. But fast forward maybe about 2 hours after that phone call, and we were both on the bullet train heading to Tokyo to meet with a client. And in Japan, when you have meetings, especially with larger companies, it's not uncommon for a meeting to go 4 hours, which really means the productive time in a meeting, it might be like 20, 30 minutes. The rest, it's small talk, relationship building. In Japanese, you call it kankei. So our company at that time was actually called kankei culture, meaning relationship culture, just because we really believe so much in the value of relationships. But I'll never forget that it was a big lesson for me that when it wasn't a big problem to us. Like in our view, we didn't do anything wrong. It was something happened and, kind of different circumstances. But what I learned from that experience is the value of relationships and how, if what it took was for us to get on a bullet train, go a couple of hours north, sit through a 4-hour meeting and leave that experience shaking hands or at least bowing and, making sure that everything was right. That led to continue work with that client. And so that was just one example, but there was just so many that both Moria and Shinosuke and one other person who I haven't mentioned, Nakatani, which actually came into my life a little bit earlier. These are all people that really took a foreigner under their wings and opened up so many doors that, when I think today, I become almost a little bit emotional thinking about how grateful I am for them, because I highly doubt that not only the success that we achieved as a company, that would have happened. I doubt that I would have seen the things that I saw, that I got to experiences and situations that for would be very hard for a typical person to have. And so just those memories that, here I am a decade plus later, and they're still with me very vividly.
Yeah. Yeah. I can sense every bit of that as you share that with us, as you just shared that with us. And so looking back on that, and how they just started opening these doors for you, what seems like very quickly, and just like, why do you think that transpired the way they did? Why were they so willing to just help you so quickly and so easily?
Yeah, it's interesting, kind of like with the benefit of hindsight, there's probably some things that I wouldn't have thought of or necessarily seen right away. I think the first thing is they had a strong sense that that I was, quote unquote, the real deal. And it feels odd for me to say that about myself, but I think they saw a serious person. And so if I took you back to that time, Kevin, I certainly was dealing to a degree with imposter syndrome, in the sense that I was a young, literally like 20, 21 years old. And here I was being brought into the boardrooms of billion-dollar organizations. And so I made a concerted, real effort to make sure that the image that I created for the company and for myself, and the way that I conducted myself, would leave really no doubt in the minds of those that I met, that I was serious and that I was, somebody that they could trust.
Yeah.
And so my communication demonstrated that, my actions demonstrated that. If I said that I was going to do something, it would get done. If we said we were going to meet at a certain time, we would meet at a certain time, and I would show up early. All these things that to many people might feel like very small, kind of little insignificant things. Each one was like a little box that could get checked, that just helped to, I think, shape the character of how people viewed me. And I think all of us do this with everybody that we meet. Some maybe do it more than others, but we all have little signs. And something small, like as small as showing up on time or even showing up early, might not feel like a big thing, but when it's that, and then somebody says they're going to do something and they actually do it, today, that's impressive, right? And so when that happens over time, and it's just kind of, these continue to stack on top of each other, I think that provided them with a bit of reassurance and comfort that, okay, this person is, and this company is here. They're going to be here for a while. They're excited to do business. They're bringing young, fresh energy. So that'd be one side. I think the other side too is that they also saw opportunity, and not opportunity in a bad sense, like we want to take advantage of the situation, but opportunity in that, wow, leveraging and using what we already have, which is connections into hundreds of different, or even more potentially, different organizations. Now you tack on this new set of insights and perspectives and experiences coming from someone that understands North American, European markets more than we probably do, and certainly English speaking kind of communications more than we do. Let's bring that, because two is better than one, right? And so collectively, we can serve our clients so much, we can add so much more value for our clients now than potentially we could have before. And so we want to make use of this. We want to do something with it. And I think that's what really spurred, many of these different people that I met over the years to want to create more, by thinking about how they could create more value for their clients. They saw this as a way through kind of collaboration, to do so.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. And I've seen that so much over the years, being a guy who has become like a connector and conduit of trust for so many people. I have seen where, when the right people connect and collaborate together and just make that real, meaningful kind of connection, like you just spoke of, that you can achieve so much more together than either of you could have done on your own,
Mm-hmm.
and it's like, it's like 1 times 1 or 2 times 2 is not 4. It's like multiples of that, and what you just, described is exactly that when like-minded people, connect and collaborate, it becomes this co-creative thing where so much bigger things can take place. And
yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's, also the alignment of values, like you mentioned something right now,
Yes.
Kevin, which is that like-minded. And I don't think that, these relationships would have been as successful as they were and continue to be, if there wasn't a kind of a shared sense of values.
Yes.
And so when I think, as you were just speaking right now, and I was in my mind, I was thinking, what else maybe contributed to some of this being successful? And I think part of it too was, in my case, coming kind of like selfishly, I wanted to learn. These are people that not only were older than me in age, but I also felt had a lot more just varying and different experiences than I did. And so it was all about how can I be a sponge and just soak up knowledge, and learn from them. Like, I'm genuinely interested in the culture, in the language, in the traditions, in, why does that happen? And why is that person doing this thing over there? And I remember being with Maurice-san waiting waiting for the Shinkansen, the bullet train once. And you'll notice if you ever take the bullet train that conductors will come out and they'll just start pointing like to different things. Like they look crazy because they're just like literally pointing into the air. You're like, what is this wrong with this person? And so I asked Maury, and I was like, why are they doing this? And he said, the reason they're doing this is because they essentially have a mental checklist. And sometimes if they're earlier in their career, they'll actually have like a written checklist. They have to go through different checks, same way that a pilot would, to make sure that things are in order before the train kicks off. And so just little things like that, like I would have thought of that, or, being in a little izakaya, a little Japanese kind of drinking establishment, and seeing different things happen. These to me were so interesting. It was all about the culture. And what I learned is that if you want to go deeper in and be successful in a different culture, you need to immerse yourself into the culture. And so for me, that was also a big thing in terms of learning the Japanese language, is that I would listen a lot. I'd listen to people's intonations and tones, and how they would adjust things and when they would use certain words in different situations. And then I'd be able to kind of play that back. So for me, that kind of being inquisitive and wanting to learn, to soak information up, and ask questions. So, talk a lot less and ask a lot more, really, I think served me well in that dynamic.
Yeah. So as you think back on these three relationships that you've talked about here, and all that has transpired in the years since you first met these three people, what is one or maybe two things that just really stand out for you, that where you, because of these relationships, you made such a big impact, and yet without them, hands down, that never would have happened without these relationships?
Well, so one that I learned from Moria-san many years ago, is all about providing insights and value to your clients. Mm-hmm. So this would have been, almost a couple of decades ago. And back in those days, I'll never forget, Moria-san would come into the ad agency office, and he'd be sitting there, cigarette in one hand, a little coffee in the other. And he'd take out the newspaper and he'd read multiple newspapers. And when he'd find an article that he thought one of his current clients or prospective clients might find interesting, he cut it out. And he'd cut it out. And in most cases, he would just take it to their office. And so if he had a scheduled meeting, he would bring it with him. If he didn't, sometimes he might fax it. But he was always thinking about his clients or prospective clients. And there was no direct expectation. He just wanted to always be at the cutting edge. He wanted to demonstrate to them that he cared about them, that he was somebody that they could turn to, really a trusted advisor. And so for me, that was such a powerful lesson. It's something that I continue to share even with our clients. It doesn't matter whether you're a consulting business doing 6 figures, 7 figures, or beyond. The idea is that you should always be sharing valuable information and insights with your clients. And if you are the source of truth, or you are the source of insights and knowledge, people value that, because most people are not going to be on top of that as much as you are. So to me, that's just such a powerful kind of, a lesson that the people can apply forever. It's not something that will get outdated. If you put your clients first or prospective clients first, you're always thinking about how you can add value to people and share things with them, even if that information is not your own. So it's not necessarily that you're, right, sharing your article or your book or your resource. Yes, you can do those things, but being able to share anything that you feel be valuable for somebody that you want to build a relationship with, is a really powerful lesson that I learned from him. So that's one. The other would be Nakatani, who, if we go back even further in time, he was someone that I met through someone that I actually connected with in college. And she connected me with Nakatani because they were both from the same hometown. And he was running, and still is running, a very successful IT company, being the owner and president of that. And he actually invited me to do an internship in his company. And so that was my first experience to actually working inside of a Japanese company. But he, at that time and still today, has so many things going on. I think one of the things that he taught me to think about was just to think bigger, right? And it's a lesson that certainly I've heard and learned and thought about many, many times over the years. But when I looked at what he was doing, and I should say, I also learned some things from him that I didn't want to do in certain ways, that he was approaching things that for me just didn't make sense in terms of my priorities. But from, every person that I met, I certainly gained many lessons. Some things, again, were lessons of, oh, I don't want to do that. That doesn't fit necessarily with my exact values or my priorities. Yeah. But in many cases, it was, wow, that's a really interesting way of thinking about something, or a really interesting way of doing something. And I could pull from that. So, I mean, the list really, Kevin, would just go on and on. There's many of them, but I think probably that one from Moriya-san for me would be a very tangible one that I could offer.
Yeah. Yeah. That's huge. That's huge. And, I really want to thank you for taking the time to share what you did, because, my goal for this has always been twofold: to, for you, my guest that I interviewed, to be able to share your experience around this topic and honor people who have had such a profound impact on your life and on your business, but also for the listeners, who are also entrepreneurs, CEOs, founders. I want to just, when they listen to the interviews that we do here, I want it to just inspire them to place an intentional focus on creating more real, meaningful, rewarding, and profitable relationships in their lives.
Totally. And Kevin, I think just one final thought that I'd love to leave people with is, and I think it doesn't matter what level you're at. I know many, people listening to this are, 7, 8, 9-figure businesses, whatever it might be, and some might be earlier stage. But going back to my experience with this, when I think about when I first started this activity, I was probably not even 20 yet in terms of sending those emails to people. It started with that. Like, some people, don't want, they're looking for, like, how can I automate this, or how can I fast track this? They're looking for, like, the shortcut. But I don't think you can shortcut relationships necessarily. I mean, probably the best way to shortcut is through an introduction or a referral. But in terms of, you can't try and shortcut building a meaningful relationship, because if you do, it's probably going to come across the wrong way, and it does take work. And so, yes, I had to do the research and find who these people might be, and then send the emails. And I think these days, a lot of people aren't even willing to do that. When I found one of my first jobs, or like a lot of like summer jobs that I used to take, it was literally picking up the phone book and just calling companies saying, like, are you hiring? Are you hiring? Are you hiring? Right. So, whatever, if you want to get something done, just figure out what you need to do, take action on it. And in terms of building these relationships, I think you can meet anyone you want to meet. You can connect with the right people, as long as you put kind of them first, you put the work in, but you also think about how can you add value for people.
That's right.
That's been my experience, at least. And you certainly, Kevin, know a lot more about that, I would say. So,
well, I'll tell you, you're right. You're right. You can get in contact with anybody when we show up the right way, and when we show up with the right intention, and really just the little stuff that you mentioned about just doing what you say you're going to do, showing up on time, or even a couple minutes early. It seems like little stuff, but you're so right. It's that little stuff that totally sets you apart from so many other people, because so many people just don't do that.
Totally.
And
it's because I think you can, like, the idea of, like, speed, how can I shortcut, or how can I, establish this relationship faster, aside from getting an introduction or a referral. I think when people make an attempt to build a relationship quickly with someone, they tend to do more harm than good. Because I think the real relationships come from not trying to make things happen faster than they should. And if you try and move too quickly with someone new, and you really want to build a meaningful long-term relationship with them, it probably will come off as being too promotional or too salesy or not necessarily in their interest. And they'll see you as just kind of quote unquote another salesperson.
Yeah.
But if you really see long-term potential to build a meaningful relationship with somebody, then it's all about putting them first and thinking about how you can add value and how you can just continue to show up, and so that they know you're there for them.
That's right. And, you know, and we have that intention that we just want to be of service, to provide value, to be of assistance and help to other people. When we just show up that way, people can sense that. They just, like, you don't have to say anything. You just set that intention and show up that way. People can totally sense that about you, you know, and they feel that. So, Michael, for anybody listening to this going, dang, Kev, I just really like Michael. I like who he is. I like what he shared. How can they find out more about the work that you guys are doing and stuff? Some research.
Sure. Yeah. Consultingsuccess.com.
Okay.
We have almost 1,000, articles available for free for people who want to grow their consulting businesses. And you can also check out the Consulting Success podcast, where we interview and talk with successful consultants about how they got to where they are and lessons learned along the way. So yeah, consultingsuccess.com would be the best place for everything going on in the world that we work in.
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you so much for taking the time to have this conversation. Any last thing you want to share before we call it a wrap, Michael?
No, thank you, Kevin. I always love our conversations and the ones we've had here in the last little bit, and just applaud you on, the work that you're doing. There's so much value that I know that you are creating for people through the work that you do, and I just enjoyed jumping on here today with you as well.
Same. Well, thank you again, and have a great rest of your day.
You as well.